The title of this story, Just Because I Am Young Does Not Mean I Cannot Be the Boss, is taken directly from I Do Work Here, Lady. I worked at a very successful nightclub with a multi-leveled younger population downstairs and large spenders upstairs. On our busiest evenings, we are talking about $70,000 per night, while on typical nights, we are talking about $30,000. When a staff member made excellent tips, we used to receive a ton of applications. When I was 19, I began working as a bouncer at the bar for a summer job. I ended up enjoying it and doing well at it. In any case, fast forward a few years. At the age of 23, I was appointed general manager of the bar, which employs roughly 50 people. We opened for deck drinkers throughout the week, and since I was not always in the office, I would either dress to impress on some days or labor around the bar doing small repairs, painting, and other things. In any case, a female knocks on the door before we open, so I came down to let the workers in so they could start working. She has a holier-than-thou attitude and looks down her nose at everyone. You know the sort. I ask her how I can help and open the door for her. After giving me a quick glance while I am wearing boots, work jeans, and a t-shirt, she walks straight past me without even saying, "How do you do?" telling the bartender that she needs the manager so she can provide her CV. I had the unique pleasure of seeing her cheeks flush as I informed her that I was the manager and promptly threw away her resume without even glancing at it. Many of our high-spending consumers appear to be unimportant, so was I the NDH twist in this instance. If you go by the person who asked you a question and ignore him, how much worse of a first impression could you possibly make? And as it happens, they actually oversee the entire establishment as general manager. Because of that behavior, I can see why he threw out her CV before even looking at it. I believe he is pointing out that many people who spend a lot of money look like nobody because he is saying that, in this instance, she should not treat people who are dressed like nobody like that because he is the general manager of the entire establishment and he was dressed that way. It is quite strange that people treat any staff member rudely, as others have noted. Why treat him rudely, even if he was only working in an entry-level position? Furthermore, why would you want to employ someone who is inconsiderate to other employees? If I am not the first person approached by an applicant, I always ask my staff what their interaction was like, someone commented, which was a valid point. People who like to upset me are not invited. The booty goes to the snooty. There are further instances like this as well. I am fairly certain that I got my current job as a bartender because I was courteous to the bartender on the way in and on the way out, a man claims. The owner informed me months later that the bartender that day thought I would do well working there, but he did not state it was the reason he hired me. One further example is a man who states, "It is very crucial to receive input from first contact individuals, like a receptionist. You may learn a lot about an application by how they handle them." And I believe it to be absolutely accurate. Everything is blatantly transactional if you are only acting politely toward those you want something from. Do you think you would want to collaborate with someone like that? However, please share your thoughts and what you would do in this circumstance. When my autistic brother asked me why ladies do not like him, I told him the truth. Was it an NDH twist, Night Diaries hub twist, or not? My sibling is younger than me. He is 25 years old, highly functional, and has Asperger's syndrome. I will put up with his eccentricities. I recently returned home to take care of my parents while under stay-at-home orders. I discovered that my brother, who still resides with them, has been making an effort to date in recent months and has come clean. For him, it has been rather unsuccessful. He even had the opportunity to go on a first date, but after about 30 minutes, his date actually stood up and walked away. It is not flattering, and I am quite aware of why. First of all, because he was the only boy in our family and on the spectrum, my parents had always lavished him with attention. In particular, my mother constantly assured him that he was more intelligent and developed than all the neurotypical people. Because of this, he now believes that he is actually brighter than everyone else, especially women, whom he believes to be stupid and irrational by nature. I am therefore aware of his interactions with women, whether they are his sisters or me. When we get outraged, he will say something like, "You are being irrational/hysterical/illogical," after initially saying something extremely unpleasant. "You cannot accept that I am just being honest." Over the years, this has become his slogan, and it drives us completely crazy. "Listen, the truth is your way of talking to women can come across as extremely demeaning and borderline sexist," I essentially answered when he inquired. "He acts as though he can read every woman flawlessly, but he is almost always mistaken," I informed him. He was offended by this and later told to my parents that I had attacked him over uncontrollable things. I feel guilty and yet relieved at the same time because I am in hot water now for undermining his confidence. Since our mother usually placed the responsibility for his outbursts on us when I was growing up, this was the first time in my life that I had ever informed him how annoying his behavior was. Perhaps I was being too severe. So, hub twist from Night Diaries for informing him what I said. It is not offensive at all the way she said that. "Listen, the truth is your way of talking to women can come across as extremely demeaning and borderline sexist," she states quite literally. That should not make him feel horrible about himself personally in any way. She is commenting on his speech pattern. And even though he claims that he has no control over his thoughts, she may be telling him that if he knows what to look for, he can recognize what would come across as demeaning and then modify his speech, even if he does not initially alter his thoughts. She seems to be stating the most practical and beneficial thing, in my opinion. Because she would have left as soon as she arrived, so if he is getting into situations where people are actually leaving him 30 minutes into a date, it is most likely due to something he said rather than his appearance or something similar. She is providing him with genuine, honest assistance when he asks for it, and he takes offense. This situation seems a little odd. However, what would you do in this circumstance, and is she the NDH twist for undermining his self-esteem? Hub twist from Night Diaries for creating a humorous wall of shame for those who stole from my mother's garden. Because they were too cheap to purchase from the florist, people have occasionally been by and stolen potted plants, yard statuettes, and even full plant bulbs with plants out of the ground. Other times, they have cut all the roses off my mom's bushes. Anyway, I placed my car in the driveway next to the garden bed, and my dash cam captured them all up close. I did this to help my mom prevent her plants from being stolen. I created a poster that stated, "Oh, hey there," after printing out all of their photos. Avoid stealing like a daffodil or you may find yourself in a difficult situation. We hope that this will teach you a lesson. After that, I posted images of everyone taking from the border garden and gave them all amusing fictitious names. Mr. Potato Head Benjamin, I Peony in My Pants, Frownless Dirtbag, Root Boy, Prick, Sucker, and Pothead. I found it adorable and humorous, asking how stupid plant puns could upset someone. My mother, who was tired of having things taken, found it humorous and asked me to hang it up. However, I received a few complaints. One neighbor claimed I should remove it because I had a photo of his son, a minor, who did something stupid, yes, but was only attempting to deliver flowers to his ailing girlfriend, and it was disrespectful and out of context to publicly humiliate him. He said I was being petty when I informed him it was not that big of a concern. I may have been being petty when I called this child a little birch, but it really annoyed him. Another man came to the house and returned a cutting that his wife had apparently taken, presumably believing it would not be a big deal. However, she cut off a quarter or something, which harmed the plant. He also asked if we would remove the sign because she was on the town's board of directors or something. When my mother answered the door, she instructed him to buzz off and make like a bee. In any case, it appears that these two families are acquainted, and they are now both irritated. Hub for Night Diaries twist for putting up a trivial notice to try to deter robbers from my mom's garden. They took the pots and the plants, after all. Both of those things are expensive, and gardening is not only expensive but also time and effort consuming. There is no distinction between this and someone simply entering your yard and taking anything, no matter what it is. It is not as if they are attempting to file charges or anything by calling the police on these individuals. They are doing it in a humorous, meme-like manner. For example, the section about the sick girlfriend, where the parent would help the child acquire the roses if they were so worried. However, it feels a little off. This garden continues to be abused by the entire community. We do not really sure how this is set up, but perhaps you could just put a fence around it, or if one already exists, anything that makes it harder for someone to just jump over and take everything they want. But it is absurd that everyone believes they can help themselves from this garden, even though they are not paying for it or investing the necessary time and effort. Although it is unlikely to occur, this looks like an excellent opportunity to create one of those community gardens where everyone has a very little patch of ground and is free to plant anything they wish. They all respect each other's small plots and are able to cultivate what they need to grow. So, if you were in this circumstance, how would you respond? Is it an NDH twist or not? For forcing my daughter to sleep in a tent, is Night Diaries hub twist to blame? In addition to being a 35-year-old woman, I am the sole parent of 2 kids, Amelia, 15, and Skylar, 17. I had to put in a lot of work after their father passed away while I was expecting Amelia. I was barely surviving money to paycheck when we reached our lowest point. However, I was able to earn a degree, succeed, and maintain a good standard of living. The point is that my daughters understand how difficult it is to be at the bottom of society, which is why I was furious with her yesterday. I watched a video that Skylar shared of Amelia cursing at a homeless man and demanding him to stop begging for money. If you were not so lazy and spent your earnings on drugs, you would have earned it yourself. Yeah, people camp for fun, Amelia said in response to the homeless man's complaint about the cold. We dwell in the northeast of England. Even in December. You cannot be a winner. You are enjoying someone else's vacation. To say I was furious would be an understatement, as I believed I had brought up a sympathetic daughter. I chose to accept her offer of sleeping outside, followed by locating the homeless man, forcing her to apologize, helping to pay for a hotel room for the night, she paid £20 of it, and registering her to volunteer at a food bank. I set up a tent in the garden, posted a sign that read, "Closed for the holidays," and locked her bedroom door to prevent her from entering. I loaded it up with blankets and the sleeping bag I used for a particularly bloody thermal while camping in Norway during a family vacation when I was a teenager. That night, I slept in the room nearest the garden so that I would be close in case something went wrong. Despite her reluctance, she decided to do it rather than risk losing her phone until after the Christmas break. She sobbed in the morning about how awful it was to wake up on a chilly mat and have her sleep disturbed by birds. Would you like to do that every day, like the homeless man? I asked her after reassuring her. She was crying about what she had done, and it resonated with her. Amelia was preparing a large supper to give to the homeless people who live on the road close to our house this afternoon when I got home from work, even though she had been rolling her eyes even after the £20 and her apologies was not genuine. My sister came over after she took the meal to folks, and I was proud of her for turning around. Amelia and my nephew were apparently chatting at school when he inquired about her afternoon plans. She promised to go cook for the homeless people. When my nephew questioned what caused that, she just said, everything, which was relayed to his mother. My sister claimed that I was acting unreasonably because of my history and that my punishment was excessively severe, saying that a simple £20 payment and the food bank would have sufficed. I am now doubting myself. The hub twist of Night Diaries. To be honest, many people lack empathy for the homeless, so it is not a terrible idea to squash that now, especially in a safe way. Simply volunteering frequently, especially with those who are in dire need, can completely alter someone's outlook on life in general, even if they are not living in a tent in the garden. Not all homeless people are violent addicts or anything, and even those who are do not have any less value as people. Particularly if they are merely attempting to keep themselves alive and mind their own business without causing harm to others. It is not illegal. It appears that the parents' actions were successful in this case. When I first started reading this narrative, I kind of did not think that was going to happen, but it did. Whether it was making her apologize, sleeping outside, or volunteering at the food bank, I am interested to discover what had the biggest influence on her thinking. All of those things obviously had a transformational effect. However, I believe that simply speaking with the homeless person, listening to what they have to say, and treating them like real persons rather than just trash that is thrown on the ground would likely have an equally powerful impact. Tell me what you people think, then. Although the sister believes her mother went too far, what do you think and how would you respond in this circumstance? What makes it an NDH twist or not? Hub for Night Diaries twist for not waiting for my parents and for starting my wedding on schedule. Everything about my Saturday wedding was fantastic, with the exception of my parents' tardiness. They were aware of the ceremony time, and my spouse and I made it very apparent to everyone, both in person and in the invitations, that we would begin at that very moment. We spent a lot of money on the venue. We wanted to make the most of every minute because we were the ones who paid for the entire wedding and we could only use it for a short period of time. On the day of the wedding, my parents still had not arrived 30 minutes before our start time. Both my spouse and I contacted them several times, but no one picked up. We kept waiting, but we never heard anything. When the start time finally came, my parents were still absent. By this time, I was pretty mad. I replied in the affirmative when the wedding coordinator asked if I was ready to begin the ceremony. Since everyone was already present, we wanted to show consideration for their time. My parents arrived 15 minutes later, although they were not present for the entire ceremony. As it turns out, they did leave early, but they had to deal with the police, insurance, and other issues after getting rear-ended at a red light. They were unable to contact me because they only have a landline and no cell phones. It goes without saying that I could not have known this. They are upset with me for not postponing the wedding by 15 minutes so they could be there, and I am still annoyed with them for not trying harder to arrive at the location early. The hub twist of Night Diaries. Yes, this is a difficult scenario, and the fact that the parents do not have a cell phone makes things much more difficult. If the parents had a cell phone of some kind, they could have called and said, "Hey, we are this far away. Soon, we will be there." However, without that, the OP would have no way of knowing how long it would take. That is, if she is expected to wait an hour for them to arrive, she has no idea when they will arrive. What will she say to people? It sounds like the venue is charging them for their time, so let us wait another 45 minutes. And as she makes clear here, the time spent by those who attended her wedding appears to be more significant. However, if it was your child and you were rear-ended and missed the entire wedding, something that is also not really your fault, that would be awful. Nobody really did anything wrong to cause this whole issue. Nobody did anything wrong here, even though I get that the OP is sort of implying that they ought to have departed even sooner, anticipating that they would have been involved in a rear-end collision. She could not tell how long to wait because the parents left with ample time to be there if they had not been in a real vehicle accident. Therefore, none of this is actually the direct outcome of anyone's activities. However, if you were in that circumstance, how would you respond? Would you have postponed the nuptials? Would you have accepted responsibility? Is it an NDH twist or not?